Welcome to our podcast, where we talk about the interesting, frustrating, and inspiring experiences we have as people with strongly held religious views working in corporate IT. We're not here to preach or teach you our religion. We're here to explore ways we make our career as IT professionals mesh, or at least not conflict, with our religious life. This is Technically Religious. This is a continuation of the discussion we started last week. Thank you for coming back to join our conversation. Another area that I think we can, in IT, build a sense of gratitude is in the amount of work that we do, that we need to recognize in IT the difference between hours and accomplishments.
Amen. How
much time we spend and how much we accomplish. And I'm going to have a really radical idea. And anybody who's listening to this who manages people or runs or owns a business is probably not going to like me saying this, but salaried employment cuts both ways. Do not try this at home. Do not push this at work if you are in a shaky situation or whatever. But I am telling you right now that if it is okay for work to say, well, there was an emergency or you have to get this done, and if it takes you 50 hours to do it, then I guess that's what it takes. Then equally so is if you get your work done today in 4 hours, you can go home because you got it done. And I think sometimes we need to recognize that I got it done. I did it. Yay me. I don't need to spend more hours sitting here pretending or looking for trouble again or picking that next thing off the pile because this is what I intended to get done today.
Absolutely. And I mean, even on the flip side of that, I've had days where things just weren't going well. And all of a sudden I realized if I keep going, I'm going to break something way worse than it is. And it is much better for me to just get up and walk away and come back tomorrow. Yeah. Now, by the same token, I'm not currently a salaried employee, so that should indicate that it hasn't always worked well.
Right. When you're in trouble, I think that that's a technique. But I want to hit this again for just a moment and say that when we're talking about gratitude and talking about appreciating something, how amazing would it be if at 2:00 in the afternoon you realized, I got it done. I fixed the problem. I did it. I'm going home. You show up at home to your family, your dog, your TV, whatever it is, your Halo, your Quake cooperative, whatever, World of Warcraft team, whatever it is. And they're like, why are you here? I got my work done. I get extra time. I'm finished. Free recess for the rest of the day. Yay me. That is powerful.
I recently had to go through an experience just like that, where for 20 years I have been the person who has always been present. I learned from my parents that showing up to work is even more important than doing well at work. And not that my parents did a poor job, but they taught me that always being at work showed value. And so I fell into the trap, Leon, that you talked about. I routinely would work 50, 60, 70, and 80 hours a week during my 20-year career because that's what I thought I had to do. And in my new job, I very much have the autonomy to decide when I've had enough. In fact, I'm expected to not be at work all day when I don't need to be at work all day. And it's a really weird dichotomy for me because I've had to reprogram my mind to work around that. I mean, I think, again, another podcast episode, another date, another time, but we need to realize that, again, Doug's sins aren't my sins, right? I hope not for your sake. Yeah. so to quote a famous Mormon whose name was J. Golden Kimball, he was also known as the swearing apostle. He used to say, in fact, he used to swear over the pulpit in the conference center in Salt Lake. But he used to say famously, I'm not going to hell, I repent too damn fast.
There we go.
Don't worry, Doug, we're fine. All right.
Another habit I think that can lead to a better sense of gratitude is actually just thankfulness, which I know is kind of buzzwordy these days. Saying thank you a lot. Just say thank you to other folks for the things that they do a lot. It has an incredible effect on you. It has an incredible effect on people around you. But just get into the habit of saying thank you.
And it's important to be able to do that, to actually be aware of the people that are doing stuff for you. I mean, I actually went to an exercise program today. I know, hard to believe, um, but it was our first time going, and I didn't know how it worked. And I got my wife there, and she's settled. And I was looking around, and I could tell that we were supposed to get some equipment, but I couldn't tell what, how some people had it and some people. So this lady came up and she said, let me show you where to get this stuff. And she took me over there, and I got all my equipment, and we did the exercise. But I made sure that when I went back, I said, I really appreciate you finding me wandering around and putting me in the right direction. And because people don't do that. You could have just let me, there were 50 people in the room. One person came up to help me.
Uh-huh.
And so, but I made sure that I noticed that she had helped me, of course, but then I made sure I went back and thanked her. So it's
Yes.
so you're grateful when people do stuff for you, but you have to, people do things for you all the time, and you may not even notice.
And I think this ties back to the authentic comment that I made earlier. You were appreciative for a very specific thing, and you went and found someone, and you didn't just say, hey, thanks for your help. You said, hey, thank you for helping me to do this thing. You saw me in need. I'm grateful for that. That is way better than getting the traditional hallmark, hey, thank you for being a great person. Because why? Like, what did I do as a great person?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for me,
Participation award.
There we go.
in Canada, we used to call them the Participation Award. It was an exercise program. So anyway, Canada's weird. And you used to get a participation. It was, gold, silver, bronze, these little knitted medallions.
Of
And then
course
if
they
you
were
did,
knitted.
yeah, well, kind of knitted. And then if you didn't get a gold, silver, or bronze, then you got a participation award. Anyway, it was growing up in the 80s was weird, man. It was really weird. I'm curious for both of you. How do you show your true authentic nature when you're expressing gratitude to others? I mean, Doug, you gave us a great example, an evidence of how you do it. Are there any other ways that we can pull that off? Because I want to be more authentic in 2020.
I think that some of your comments hit on it. First of all, recognizing what the person did and that it was, and also understanding that it was exceptional. I mean, it's always important to say thank you to your wait staff. It's always important to say thank you to the people who are there being paid to help you, because, yes, they're being paid. You don't you don't fall on your knees for that, but you still thank them. Like, I recognize that you just did something for me. But when somebody is not there in that capacity or role, to say, hey, I know you took time out of your exercise routine just to put me on the right track. I saw that. I see you. You are not invisible to me. I think that in itself is powerful. And then also expressing how it helped you or how it made you feel. And Doug, I know that feelings are not always things that you are, thrilled about talking about or sharing or anything like that. Again, we've known each other a really long time, but saying, it really, I was really uncomfortable. It's our first day here. I didn't know what to do, and you made it a lot easier for me. Tells that person how they impacted your life. And you want to call it positive reinforcement? Fine. You want to call it paying it forward? Fine. But it, in the same way that you would probably want to be thanked and recognized by a stranger on the street.
Yeah. It's just being appreciated for what you're doing. I mean, when I go through checkout on a holiday, when I can just tell that they are just being slammed,
Uh-huh.
I generally tell the cash out guy, I said, I really appreciate you being here because I needed to get this food today, and the fact that you're here just made my life so I could do this. I mean, if you think if none of the cashiers showed up,
Right.
you'd have to steal all the food. I mean, excuse me, no, they wouldn't open the store.
I was surprised. I recently I took a trip and I went into the airport lounge. First time in my entire life that I've ever gone into an airport lounge. Had to look at the the podcast episode we did where we talked about, the tweaks.
Conventions and travel hacks, right?
Yeah, travel hacks, right? So that was good. So I went into the lounge, and one of the times I spent 7 hours in this lounge on a layover. I was surprised how many people in the lounge did not say thank you when the staff in the lounge came by and picked up your plates and your cups and stuff. Come on, people. Say thank you to the people who are like, you don't tip these folks. Their only thing that they're there for is to make your life in the lounge more pleasant. The least you can do is look up, smile at them, and say thank you.
Right. Again, I see you. I see what you did. I appreciated what you did. Exactly. Doug, before we started recording, you talked about something else about hearing the thank you when it's not said. And I want to give you a chance to tell that story over.
It's really, because this is the flip side. This is, we're talking about we should be grateful, we should be thanking other people, but we're also looking at ways that we can go ahead and find gratitude and in our own lives. And sometimes the reality is we are not thanked for the wonderful things that we do for other people. I know this comes as a shock to everybody, but it's true. And when I had my own consultancy, for the longest time, I would I would be doing work for clients and doing work for clients and doing work for clients, and clients never thank you. I mean, yeah, they pay you, but they never actually thank you. But then all of a sudden I realized every time they said, okay, now that's done, now what I want is, they were essentially saying, thank you for the thing that you just did, because they wouldn't ask me to do the next thing if they weren't grateful for the fact that I had accomplished the first thing. So every time from then on that I heard, now what I want is, in my head, I just flipped it to, thank you, Doug. And we were off and rolling.
That's why I wanted to tell it over, because that's really powerful. If you think about all the times at work that people say, okay, next, I want you to do blah, blah, and just realize that there is an implicit, not explicit, but an implicit thank you, great job, because if you screwed it up, believe me, I would have told you.
Right. And they wouldn't be asking you to do work on anything else ever again. That there's a very strong thank you every time they give you something new. And if it's bigger, it's a big thank you.
I want to point out to our listeners, because I'm sure a number of them have had these moments, the weekly team meeting where we all start off by usually the manager saying, I just want to point out that Josh showed up to work today, or something really mundane. Those scenarios where you as a manager or a team lead are compelled to call out the things that your team does well, completely backfire on your team. Don't do them. If you're going to do them, make sure that it's for things that are exceptional to the norm. For example, me showing up at work today is not normally exceptional. Me showing up to work today after I worked all weekend, that might be exceptional. Hey, Josh, we really appreciate the fact that you worked all weekend and that you're here on Monday morning and that you have pants on. Those are exceptional things. But don't force that gratitude, because that just hurts your team. I don't know.
This goes back to the authenticity, but I had a very different experience. I had a manager who was himself exceptional in this regard, that he would first look for and then began to solicit and curate points of recognition for the team. And I'll post an example of it in the show notes. So if you're listening to this on a Tuesday, it'll be posted on Wednesday. But it was really remarkable the effect it had, because to your point, Josh, he was recognizing the exceptional. Mostly. He would say, okay, we saw that, I noticed that you were online at 2:00 in the morning. It wasn't your on call, but you just noticed it. And that's really incredible. Please don't feel obligated to do that. But I know that you did, and we appreciate it. But there was one thank you in the example I'm thinking of where he said, George, or whatever his name was, there was nothing really noticeable about you this week. You're fired. No, just joking. He says, really, what was interesting was that everything that you accomplished was remarkably normal and under the wire. It was consistent and it was typical, and it's what everyone has come to expect from you because you do it all the time. And I just want you to understand that consistency is also appreciated. So here was a way to take a person who had a normal week, nothing, to your point, Josh, nothing exceptional, no 2 a.m. Sev 1 calls, no working the weekend, and say, but that's valuable too.
That's managerially brilliant, because the problem is when the only thing that you ever reward is people putting out fires, you get a lot of people who put out fires. And so they let fires happen so that they can then put them out, as opposed to the person that goes ahead and does their job day in and day out so that there are no fires. They never get recognition.
Charity Majors, about a year ago, talked about this, that one of her techniques was to recognize people who, first of all, people who paid down technical debt. That was one of the things, and that got higher praise than either fixing a bug or resolving a crisis, because that was valuable. But also she made sure that she recognized people who submitted things to, submitted their code and there were no defects. That submitting with 0 defects was more valuable than bug fixes, because it meant there weren't, because it meant everything that it meant. And I think that was really good.
I would suggest that being consistently good at your job, and our job is to either build things, fix problems, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
That individual who did everything that they were asked to do and the things that they weren't asked to do without being asked, that is unfortunately truly exceptional. That's how
It's true.
I hate to be that type of person, but I tell my kids all the time, it is not hard to be exceptional. You just need to be consistent and transparent. That makes you exceptional, because so many people are not both consistent and transparent in the things that they're doing. So maybe for us, we're like, oh, that's cool that my boss recognized somebody who wasn't exceptional. But what your boss was really saying was, hey, Sally, that was really awesome that you did those things. And the backhand was, all the rest of y'all need to look at what Sally's doing and say, hey, this is what's valued, not you off saving the world, from a calamity that you created.
Another point, just bringing in a Jewish habit. So there's a Jewish tradition that you're supposed to say at least 100 blessings a day, which is actually not hard in the Jewish tradition, because there's a blessing for just about everything. From the moment you wake up, before you even get out of bed, there's a blessing for, thank you for letting me wake up this morning, to a blessing for going to the bathroom. Yes, there's a blessing for to go to the bathroom. There's a blessing for every bite of food in your mouth, every bite of food you put in your mouth. There's a blessing for everything. And so that's the first thing. And we can recognize, I think, regardless of the religious tradition, that when you say a blessing, you're saying thank you. But there's a deeper level that I think is worth pointing out, which is that in the phrasing of a blessing, it's not thank you for this thing. Thank you for this apple. Thank you for it. You're saying thank you for this moment. Thank you for this moment where I get to have this apple, where I get to get out of bed, where I get to go to work. I get to, all these things. Thank you for bringing me to this moment in time, because that wasn't a guarantee. And the result of that, for many people, being thankful for every moment and saying, did I get my 100 blessings in today? Because that's the goal. Okay, fine. That you become more grateful for things because you're looking for the things to say thank you for.
I'm disappointed, Leon. I thought when you were going to talk about Jewish traditions, you were going to invoke the holiday where we all get drunk.
There is one of those. There's the get drunk holiday. There's also the eat cheesecake holiday.
What?
There's also there's also the eat fried foods holiday. This is an entirely other podcast episode.
Holy crap, I should have been Jewish.
Well, now that you're next Mormon, you still have an option.
Yes. I'd like to point out, Judaism does not have a tradition of proselytizing. Everyone goes to heaven. You don't need to be on the team, and everyone can participate in some of these holidays, even if you're not on the team. And my house is always we have an open door policy. So you're welcome to come for the cheesecake holiday or the fried foods holiday or the get drunk holiday.
I was going to say, who needs to proselytize when you've got holidays like get drunk, eat cheesecake, and eat fried foods? Like, oh my goodness.
Okay, not all at the same time. They're separate days.
Oh.
Separate days.
Now
I
you
thought
lost
you
me.
had like Christmas every day of the year.
Okay. All right. And I think what we're doing is we're actually demonstrating another idea, which is really to experience joy and laugh at things, laugh at moments, try to bring more laughter in. If you feel like your work in IT is becoming really hard to take, finding ways to bring some laughter in, whether that's listening to a really good, funny podcast, or I know some people who watch, slapstick. They watch, old, 1930s, like the Marx Brothers movies or whatever tickles your funny bone, Three Stooges or, Monty Python or whatever it is that does it for you. But bringing more laughter into your life makes a difference. That just laughing helps.
I agree. I also recommend laughing at yourself.
For some of us, it's easier than others.
I have no problem with that. I'm about the funniest thing when
Right.
I don't have to wait too long to see me screw up.
I mean, being self-deprecating is something that I do really well. And I don't know if it's me being Canadian or me being British or me being Canadian and British, but self-deprecation is a way for me to laugh at myself. For a long time, I took myself pretty darn seriously. And to be blunt, it nearly killed me. So now I take myself seriously when I need to be serious, but I also know that there's an awful lot in life that is not nearly as serious as we make it.
Yes, exactly. Now, I will say that laughing at yourself, especially as a way to diffuse a tense situation, even if the tense situation is in your own head, is wonderful. Sharing that at work is sometimes not safe. And I want to recognize on this podcast that not everyone is in a situation where they feel like they can highlight and laugh publicly about, hey, just screw that up. That was pretty funny, wasn't it? Because not only will the answer be no, the answer will be, and it's going to get you, everything you say can and will be held against you in a court of public opinion.
I did that. I rarely worked for a large corporation because I always thought I wouldn't do very well there, and I have now proved it. Because there was a situation where we didn't meet something and it didn't work, and everybody was like really down, and there was nothing we could have done to have actually accomplished what was supposed to have been accomplished. Made a joke, because really, what are you going to do? And it was not taken well at all. It's like I was accused of not taking the problem seriously. And the answer is, I knew the problem, and I also knew that it wasn't our fault. There was nothing we could have done. We were torpedoed by another department intentionally, because big corporations do that, and everybody was down about it. Like, why should this team be depressed because of what happened? But the humor was not taken well in that situation. I no longer work for that company. That's not the only reason, but enough episodes like that pretty much made it easy for me to be in the 10% that get chopped. Any place that automatically chops 10% of their people every year, I'm going to be in that. I'll eventually be in that 10% for some reason.
Oh, that two-letter company that we all love to hate to love. I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's a challenging one. But I think also, Doug, what you're talking about is that, again, contextualizing what you're doing, putting it into context, framing it in a way that says, hey, let's just be clear about this, whether, again, for the good or the bad. Especially when something doesn't go well, the ability to be grateful, the ability to be thankful, the ability to see the humor in it also means recognizing that, really, what are we doing here? Like, at the end of the day, we're writing software. And just one story about that, one of my really good friends that I grew up with is Leon who for many years was a director at Pixar and just retired from there not too long ago. And he was on the team working on Monsters, Inc., and they were in a meeting room. It was day 1.5 of what ended up being a 3-day effort to come up with one particular sequence in the movie, which is where they got thrown out of a door and they're in the Arctic or something, and they meet up with the abominable snowman, and they're trying to work one gag and they couldn't quite get it. And again, at day 1.5, Lee stopped everything. And he said, I just need us all to recognize that we are here being paid a not insignificant amount of money to come up with the perfect pea in the snow joke. That's what we're being paid to do right now. And we just need to recognize how incredibly awesome our jobs are.
I want that job so badly. Oh my goodness.
Right? Because there was a lot of pressure in the room. Like, we got to get this right.
I used to work for a major automotive manufacturer, one of the big three. And when the line shut down, it was an awful lot of money a minute that was not being realized because people weren't working. And I used to say to people, I worked in support in a couple of their facilities for a period of time. We're not curing cancer here, folks. Because people, I've never been in the military, but I have been torn up one side and down the other because of the line going down and some shift manager freaking out. And I was like, we are literally not curing cancer. I switched companies, and a few years later, I was working for a company that was helping cure cancer.
Okay, context.
Joke's
there we
on
go.
me, right? But I think we need to remember that even when we're trying to cure cancer, there's only so much that you can do. You can only move mountains so far, and then that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a laughing matter when you fail to deliver in spite of your best efforts and someone dies. Not a laughing matter. But we can be grateful of the effort that we put in. I could never be a first responder because I would want to save everybody, and that just is not what happens as a first responder. And a friend of mine is a doctor, and I remember listening to stories from him being an intern and the people dying on the gurney as he was doing his ER rotation. And I thought, there's no way, just no way I can do that. But on one hand, I'm very grateful that I'm not a doctor. On the other hand, I'm also very grateful that he had the wherewithal to understand that he couldn't save everyone, but he was going to give 100%. And every day he was like, I gave him my all. I can't save that person who came in with, shot 7 times. And being grateful that you put in the effort, that is really okay.
I was going to say, we're looking for ways to be grateful. When you know that you've done the best job that you can do, that's a time to be grateful. That's a time to be thankful. Even if nobody else knows that you did the best you could. And that's assuming that you bring the best you've got at any given day. Sometimes the best you've got is not all that great.
A number of decades ago, Doug and I were working at the same company, and I had a situation where in the evening I was working on a client's computer, and the hard drive completely and utterly crashed, and this person lost all of their data. And I really kind of lost it because I was working on the computer at the time and the hard drive crashed. And it was early enough in my career that I did not know what to do and I did not know how to take it. And I spent some fairly emotional minutes in your office I don't know how to face this person. I don't know how to deal with this. What am I going to do? And you said, the system died on you, but you didn't take a hammer to it. It just died. Hardware does that. And you did everything you could. They didn't have backups. That's not your fault. And both putting it in context and basically saying everything you just said about you did the best you could. You don't need to carry this. And I did anyway. Because, right. And it was a sleepless night until the angry words were said and the client recovered their composure and, we moved on from that. And a week later, I was able to look back on it with a little bit more perspective. But, I was grateful to have somebody who had a little bit, a little bit better perspective on it. But also, I was eventually able to have that point of view that I had done everything I could. And this happened anyway. And, I was there. And in one respect, I was there to at least be able to say it was a this and a this and a this, and then this happened, and explain to the client coherently the sequence of events so they could at least be prepared for it next time. And wouldn't you know it, that client took religious backups after that. So, lessons learned.
Call me not surprised.
Any final words? Any last thoughts before we wrap this up?
I do. And because I know, Leon, how much you love when I quote songs, and because I think in this particular case, we miss talking about something that we should be grateful for, I am going to quote James Taylor from his song, You've Got a Friend. The first verse says, when you're down and troubled and you need a helping hand and nothing is going right. I mean, it sounds like every day in IT, right? Close your eyes and think of me, and soon I will be there to brighten up even your darkest night when you're on call. No, that's not what James Taylor said, but I mean, you just shared a story about how Doug was there for you. Having friends in IT, having friends when you work in IT that aren't in IT is really powerful. But I think that having friends who also have been there, they've gone through the experiences, that you can commiserate with them, you can laugh and have joy with them, you can cry and probably string together a fairly long sentence filled exclusively with curse words.
Yes.
That is also very powerful. So my final words, have friends. Listen to James Taylor. You've got a friend.
My final word is you can't be grateful enough. I mean, if you think you've done it all yourself, you're wrong. If you think you've screwed it all up yourself, you're wrong. Just be grateful for what you've managed to accomplish, and that just makes everything go so much better.
All right, and with that thought, I'm going to close it out with a quote from Mr. Rogers. There's now a movie out that highlights this, but it's something that I have kept up on the wall here in my office and talk about from time to time. Mr. Rogers, when he received the Lifetime Achievement Award, he said something that just has stuck with me forever. All of us have special ones who loved us into being. Would you just take, along with me, 10 seconds to think of the people who have helped you become who you are, those who cared about you and wanted what was best for you in life? 10 seconds. I'll watch the time.
Thanks for making time for us this week. To hear more of Technically Religious, visit our website, technicallyreligious.com, where you can find our other episodes, leave us ideas for future discussions, and connect to us on social media.
To quote Jacques Maritain, gratitude is the most exquisite form of courtesy.